When the father-son duo from Manila stepped onto the America's Got Talent stage, the atmosphere in the theater instantly shifted. This wasn't just another audition, it was a moment saturated with emotion, anticipation, and unmistakable authenticity. Long before they sang a single note, something in their presence, a humble bearing, a deep, warm connection between the two, suggested that this performance would be different. YouTube. Arrival on stage, poised yet humble. The duo walked confidently but quietly onto the stage, greeted with polite applause from the audience. There was no flashy entrance, no dramatic build-up. Instead, what greeted the judges and the audience was something far more sincere. Two musicians, a father and his son, ready to share their heartfelt story through music. From the very beginning, the connection between them was palpable. The father's reassuring nod to his son, and the son's comfortable trust in his father's presence, set the tone for what was to come, a performance grounded in familial bond and deep emotional truth. YouTube. Their attire was simple and unassuming, modest shirts, jeans, and a look that spoke more of everyday life back in Manila than of a polished TV stage. But this simplicity only served to highlight what would soon become the centerpiece of their audition, their voices and their story. YouTube. The first note, silence falls. As the music began, a hush swept over the audience. The father took the lead with the first notes of their original song, a slow, expressive melody that felt both tender and weighty, like someone singing directly from the heart. It was a melody that immediately drew attention not just to the beauty of the song, but to the meaning behind it. YouTube. In that first measure, it became clear that this was more than a musical performance. It was a story told in sound, of hardship and hope, of love and perseverance. The father's voice carried the experience of life lived hard, shaped by struggles that went beyond stage lighting and applause. His tone was rich with texture, hinting at years of singing with passion rather than for performance. YouTube. Then came the son's part, clear, pure, and emotionally honest. It was the contrast, two different voices blending with striking harmony, that captivated the judge's attention. What the father offered with seasoned resonance, the son contributed with heartfelt sincerity, and together they created something far greater than the sum of its parts. YouTube. Finding their voice, harmonies that stirred the audience. As the song progressed, their voices intertwined beautifully. The father's vocal control and emotional delivery anchored the performance, while the son's voice soared with an innocent yet confident clarity. Even before the lyrics became widely known, everyone present could feel the depth of meaning behind each phrase. The song was clearly original, a piece written with personal significance, not just a cover of a popular hit. YouTube. The harmonies were especially impactful because they were real, not meticulously polished in a studio, but born of lived experience and shared time spent practicing together. There was a vulnerability in their phrasing, a soft urgency that hinted at both joy and struggle. This vulnerability drew not just the audience's attention, but their emotions. YouTube. It wasn't long before the judges were visibly moved. Simon Cowell, known for his critical eye and famously difficult standards, was caught off guard by the raw emotion and depth in their performance. His expression softened, eyes fixed on the duo as if transported by their story. Other judges leaned forward, clearly taken by how deeply the song resonated beyond just its melodic beauty. YouTube. The story within. The song, more than just notes. What made this performance truly unforgettable was not just the impressive vocal delivery, but the heartfelt narrative behind it. The lyrics, sung with passion by both father and son, spoke to themes of sacrifice, resilience, and unconditional love. There were lines about journeys taken together, about rising above hardship, and about finding strength in each other's presence. Even if someone in the audience didn't speak their native language fluently, the emotional message was unmistakable. YouTube. The father's delivery of certain phrases carried a weight that only life experience can impart, a mix of love, longing, and the timeless ache of trying to give one's child more than what life has given them. The son's parts reflected a sense of hope interwoven with gratitude, a voice that was young, yet deeply expressive. When their voices converged in harmony, it wasn't just musical excellence people heard, it was connection. YouTube. The emotional crescendo, audience and judges react. As the final chorus approached, the performance built not just in volume or musical complexity, but in emotional impact. The father and son leaned into each other's presence, their voices amplifying the emotional power of the song's core message, that love, especially familial love, has the power to carry you through even the toughest trials. YouTube. By the time the last note echoed across the stage, an almost reverent silence had fallen over the crowd, an unspoken acknowledgement that they had just witnessed something rare and profound. Then, as reality returned, the audience rose in genuine applause, not just for the skills on display, but for the emotional journey they had shared with these two performers from Manila. Judges were on their feet, supporters were clapping enthusiastically, and some could be seen blinking back tears. YouTube. Simon Cowell, whose decisions are often based on a blend of technical excellence and star quality, was especially moved. This wasn't just a performance that impressed him, it was one that touched him personally. The connection he felt was evident in his expression, a moment of silence, followed by heartfelt words acknowledging how rare it is to witness such deep emotion on that stage. YouTube. The standing ovation, not just for talent, but for truth. Unlike many auditions where the focus is on spectacle or technical wizardry, the audience's reaction to this performance was rooted in something deeper. Their applause wasn't merely for how well the duo sang, but for how truthfully they expressed something universal, the bond between a parent and child, and the hope that love can give you strength when life challenges you. YouTube. For many in the crowd, this was more than just entertainment, it was a reminder. A reminder of family, sacrifice, and the beauty of shared dreams. Some in the audience wiped away tears. Others stood with smiles that reflected both joy and reverence. This reaction wasn't about fleeting fame, it was about witnessing something incredibly human and deeply moving. YouTube. And as the applause reached its peak, it was clear that this performance was already memorable, a moment that would be replayed, shared, and talked about across social media, not just for its musicality but for its heart. For many viewers around the world, particularly in the Philippines and beyond, it was a moment of pride and emotional resonance that transcended. As the final note of the father-son duo's song faded into the air, the theater seemed to hold its breath. For a brief, powerful moment, there was no cheering, no clapping, just silence. It was the kind of silence that only follows something deeply moving, when the audience needs a second to emotionally catch up with what they've just experienced. The father stood still, his hand resting lightly on his son's shoulder, while the son looked out into the crowd, eyes shining with a mix of relief, disbelief, and quiet hope. Then, almost all at once, the room erupted. The immediate reaction, a wave of emotion. The audience rose to their feet in a spontaneous standing ovation. Applause thundered through the theater, echoing off the walls, growing louder with every passing second. Some people cheered, others wiped away tears, and many simply stood in awe, clapping as if they were trying to express feelings that words couldn't fully capture. This was not polite applause, this was gratitude, admiration, and respect poured out in sound. The judges, too, were visibly affected. One leaned forward, hands clasped together, eyes locked on the duo. Another shook their head slowly in disbelief, smiling as if they had just witnessed something rare. But it was Simon Cowell, usually composed, analytical, and famously difficult to impress, who drew the most attention. Simon sat quietly, staring at the stage. Simon Cowell's silence, louder than words. For anyone familiar with America's Got Talent, Simon Cowell's silence is often more telling than his sharp critiques. While the crowd roared and the other judges exchanged glances, Simon remained seated, his expression thoughtful, almost vulnerable. He didn't reach for his microphone immediately. Instead, he looked at the father, then at the son, as if trying to fully absorb the weight of what he had just heard. This pause created tension, the good kind. The audience sensed that something special was about to happen. Simon finally leaned forward, resting his elbows on the judge's table. The applause slowly softened, allowing the room to grow quiet once more. When he spoke, his voice was calm but emotional, stripped of sarcasm or theatrical flair. "I want to tell you something," he began, looking directly at the duo. That was not just a performance. Words that cut straight to the heart. Simon continued, choosing his words carefully. He spoke about how many singers come onto the AGT stage every season, how many voices he hears, how many songs he listens to. But then he explained that very few performances manage to break through the noise and reach something deeper. "What you just did," he said, was tell a story that felt real. He gestured toward the father and son. I could feel your life in that song. I could feel the years, the struggles, the love, the sacrifices. And that connection between you can't fake that. The father nodded slowly, clearly moved, while the son blinked back tears. The audience listened intently, hanging on every word. Simon then added something that made the moment even more powerful. This is exactly why this show exists. The father's reaction, quiet gratitude. As Simon spoke, the father's composure began to crack. His eyes glistened, and his lips trembled slightly as he listened. This wasn't just praise, it was validation. Validation for years of hard work, for nights spent singing together instead of giving up, for believing in a dream that once felt impossibly far away. He squeezed his son's shoulder gently, a gesture filled with pride and reassurance. It was a small moment, but one that spoke volumes about their bond. The son, meanwhile, stood tall but emotional. His expression was a mixture of joy and disbelief, as if he was still trying to understand that this moment was real, that the man whose opinions shape careers was speaking directly to them. The build-up, everyone feels it coming. At this point, the audience sensed something extraordinary was about to happen. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some people whispered, others clasped their hands together, anticipation growing with each second. Simon paused again. He looked out at the audience, then back at the duo. You know, he said slowly, there are moments on this show when I feel incredibly proud to be sitting here. He smiled, a genuine smile, not the reserved one viewers often see. This is one of those moments. The other judges exchanged knowing looks. One of them leaned back, eyebrows raised, clearly aware of what Simon might do next. The crowd began to cheer again, sensing the turning point. The golden buzzer, a life-changing sound. Then it happened. Simon stood up. The audience gasped as he reached out and placed his hand firmly on the golden buzzer. Without hesitation, he pressed it. The theater exploded. Golden confetti rained down from above, shimmering in the bright stage lights like a cascade of dreams made visible. The iconic buzzer sound rang out, loud, triumphant, unforgettable. The crowd screamed, jumped, and clapped wildly as the father and son froze in shock. For a split second, neither of them moved. Then reality hit. Shock, tears, and joy. The son covered his mouth with both hands, eyes wide, tears streaming freely down his face. The father looked up at the falling golden confetti, then at Simon, then back at his son, his emotions overflowing. He pulled his son into a tight embrace, holding him as if afraid the moment might disappear if he let go. The audience watched as this deeply human scene unfolded, a parent and child, overwhelmed by a dream coming true in the most spectacular way. Simon walked around the judges' table and stepped onto the stage. As the confetti continued to fall, he approached the duo and spoke over the roar of the crowd. You deserve this, he said simply. Simon's final words, a seal of approval. Standing just feet away from them, Simon looked directly at the father. You've clearly given everything for your son, he said. Then he turned to the son. And you've honored that sacrifice with your talent. He placed a hand over his heart. That performance reminded me that music isn't about perfection. It's about truth. The father nodded, unable to speak, while the son whispered a soft, thank you. The moment felt timeless, as if the entire world had slowed down to witness it. The crowd and the cameras, a moment goes global. As the duo stood beneath the golden rain, cameras captured every angle, the tears, the smiles, the trembling hands. This wasn't just a television moment, it was the beginning of a story that would be shared across social media, replayed millions of times, and remembered as one of the most emotional golden buzzer moments in AGT history. Audience members chanted, cheered, and waved their arms. Some held their phones high, knowing they were witnessing something unforgettable. Others simply stood there, hands over their hearts, soaking it all in. A new chapter begins. As the confetti finally settled, the father and son stood hand in hand, still visibly shaken but glowing with joy. Simon smiled at them one last time before returning to the judges' table. You're going straight to the live shows, he said. The words echoed like a promise. In that moment, everything changed. The journey that began in Manila, with small stages, quiet rehearsals, and shared dreams, had now taken them to the biggest stage in the world. And thanks to one emotional performance and one decisive press of the golden buzzer, their future suddenly felt limitless.